Hello and welcome to College Week Live's presentation of college stress management. I'm Elizabeth Scott. I'm going to be presenting today. And welcome. I'm really glad you could come. And congratulations on doing something about college stress. College stress, whether you're in high school and you're about to face it, or if you're in the middle of it right now, can be a significant factor in your college experience. You're not going to avoid stress, but what you can do to manage it is going to change and shape how you do in your college years. So welcome, and let's get started. Let's talk a little bit about college stress and how people experience it. In terms of your health, the majority of visits made to student health services are for stress-related causes. People tend to feel anxiety, even depression if they have too much stress, and your chances of getting sick can increase. We'll talk about that more in a little bit. 39% of college women feel frequently overwhelmed. And this is a significant number because it's about 4 in 10. Women tend to be more in touch with their feelings of stress than men. So that's why we're talking about what the women are reporting. This is a pretty high number. More students are also likely to say that their health is below average, their emotional health. This is also significant because the average person tends to rate themselves as above average on most measures. It's an interesting psychological phenomenon. So we can't all be above average. The average person should rate themselves average, but we have a bias to think of ourselves as a little bit better than most. So for people to relate themselves as below average on emotional health actually shows that people are experiencing quite a bit of significant stress and emotional issues related to it. About half of college students don't graduate, and one of the factors can be feeling that there's more than they can manage, feeling overwhelmed, and not knowing how to kind of organize their time, manage their stress. So that's something that is really important to talk about and create a plan for. And that's really the bulk of what we're going to be talking about today, where the stress comes from, how it affects you, and most importantly, what you can do about it to make your college experience less stressful and more fun. Obviously, we're at college, you're at college for a reason to, promote your goals and get further with that. But you really want the experience to be enjoyable, obviously. So this is one of the biggest steps you can take because it's going to affect pretty much how you feel in most of your classes and most of your activities. Poor lifestyle habits developed in college can follow you through your life, meaning if you don't learn to manage stress now or you manage it in unhealthy ways, for example, by taking a stiff drink instead of taking a meditation break or whatever, this can really snowball and create bigger problems for you in your later 20s, 30s, and 40s. And you're really going to be feeling the effects of how you've lived your life in that time. So if you can start now when you're learning all the things that you're learning in your topics, even if you're a high schooler going into college, preparing, even if you're in the middle of high school and you're just thinking far ahead, what you can do now to learn to manage stress in a healthy way really can affect the rest of your life. A few more statistics on stress. Teens versus adults, and we all know that adults are pretty stressed right now. But let's talk a little bit about teens because most of the people watching this webinar are going to be either teens or young adults, so this sort of hits right where you are. They did a survey recently this year, and they found some pretty interesting stuff. One of the most interesting findings they found, this is the American Psychological Association. They do a Stress in America survey every year. But one of the main findings they found this year is that teens are actually not only more stressed than we realized, but more stressed than adults. They report that their stress level during the school year far outweighs what they believe to be healthy. They rated 3.9 to be what they thought would be a healthy level of stress, and the average teen felt that they were at 5.8 on a 1 to 10 scale. So more than, halfway to very unhealthy stressed. And for adults, their average was 5.1 on the 1 to 10 scale. So teens actually feel that they're experiencing greater levels of stress than adults feel they're experiencing. This is a pretty significant change because people tend to think of your teenage years as the fun, carefree years of your life and, some of the best years of your life, whether you're, a teen in high school or a teen in your early college years. And this kind of shows that the stresses that have been placed on high school and college students are getting to be significantly heavier. And the stress that they're experiencing is higher than, we're going through difficult economic times. People are working harder than they've ever had to. Some people, and teens are feeling a lot more stress than they've been expecting. They also found that about 1/3 feel that their stress levels will increase in the next year, and about 1/3 felt that their stress levels have increased in the past year. The interesting thing, almost half report they're not doing enough to manage their stress, and 1 in 10 are doing nothing to manage their stress. So congratulate yourselves and pat yourselves on the back for watching this, whether you're watching it live or whether you're watching it later through streaming, because what you can do to manage your stress is going to really affect your health and your experience in a lot of ways, and not everybody's doing this. So a little bit more about who I am. I'm About.com's stress management expert. So I run their stress management website. It's stress.about.com, and we have a wealth of stress-related resources for you to use. We have latest research on many different areas of stress and stress management. We have quick tip articles to tell you quickly what you can do to reduce and manage the stress that you're experiencing. And we also have quizzes where you can kind of examine your specific relationship to stress and how you manage it. And then we'll have targeted resources at the end of these quizzes to tell you specifically what the best things you can do are, whether it's a test on anxiety, whether it's a test on general stress, or we have quizzes that test if you're a perfectionist. One of my favorite tests is one that tests whether you're an optimist or a pessimist, because people who are pessimists tend to not realize it. And the answers to the quiz might surprise you, because answers that seem somewhat optimistic can actually be limiting thoughts. And there are resources to help you change those limiting thoughts and really unlock your potential. I'm also the author of 8 Keys to Stress Management, a book by W.W. Norton. It's part of their 8 Keys to Mental Health series. And I regularly do book giveaways, and I'm doing one through Goodreads, starting this week. So a little bit more on that in a minute. But 8 Keys to Stress Management can be found in stores. It can be found online, and there's also an audiobook that is available on audible.com and, in general, wherever audiobooks are sold or online. My background is in counseling, coaching, health psychology, and positive psychology, and I focus on stress management. So I hit stress from several different angles. Coaching is more, specific steps to take. Counseling is more examining your emotional experience with stress. Health psychology hits how stress affects your body. And positive psychology is an exciting new field. It's relatively new. It's about 10 to 15 years old, and it's an area of research where they focus things people can do to maximize their experience. Rather than focusing on pathology, they focus on what makes life meaningful and worth living. So we found some pretty interesting research-proven strategies for increasing happiness and well-being, and can relate that to stress. I'll be talking about stress and how to manage it, and then answering questions. So if you have a question, feel free to ask it now. You can type it in the little window, and I'll answer as many as we have time for. If I run out of time to answer questions, which it's happened before, but it doesn't always happen, I'll finish answering the questions on my website. I'll put them in a blog. So try to make it general so that it's something that could pertain to most people. But, any questions you have, I will try to answer as we go and at the end. So, and yes, the rest of the questions, if I can't answer them all, or if you have more questions and you want to email me later, I can answer them on stress.about.com, which is my website with about.com. So the book giveaway that I was talking about, go to goodreads.com. Excuse me. And I'm doing a giveaway through them. It should either be up now or it'll be up later in the day. And basically, they're very easy to enter, and there's just winners are chosen at random. Although they tend to choose winners who read more, but anybody can win. So it's a good way to get a free copy of my book, where I talk about the things that I talk about in these webinars and on my website, but more in depth, and there are more question and answer things and ways to implement these things in your regular life. So that's a copy of my book. So let's talk a little bit about where the stress is coming from in college. Those of you who are in college and experiencing stress, you probably know where your stress is coming from. Although the reason why it's important to really examine this, for those of you who aren't there yet, it helps to know what to expect. And for those who are, when you get stressed, when you experience a challenge that requires a response, your stress response can get triggered, your fight or flight response. And basically that creates a bunch of changes in your body and in the way you think. And if that response gets triggered and you don't counteract it with a relaxation response, which is your body's way of calming back down and getting to a state of rest, the state that you were in before you experienced the stress. If your body doesn't go through that change back and you stay stressed, your stress response remains triggered, you're more susceptible to feeling stressed by more challenges that come along, rather than experiencing them as an interesting challenge to take on and something that you can handle. You just have to figure out how. You can experience it as a threat, and you can experience more anxiety. You also can experience more tunnel vision, where you're not thinking as clearly about your options, both positive and maybe more difficult options. All this means that you're more vulnerable to new challenges that come up, and more stress that comes up in the future might impact you more heavily, to the point where you're stressed by things that wouldn't normally stress you, and you just feel that stress is everywhere. So if you're more aware of where your initial stress is coming from, your main areas of stress, that can help you manage that stress and calm yourself down, return to the relaxation response and that state of homeostasis. And then you're not going to be as stressed about the new things that come up. You're going to have more resilience to stress and a better ability to cope. So that's why we're looking at where the stress comes from. In college, you have less structure and support than you often have in high school. Less hand-holding in your classes, less support from your family, just in terms of not even having somebody necessarily to say, hey, it's time to go to bed, good luck on that test, honey. You might have some supportive friends who do that, but they probably won't give you the level of support that you're getting from your parents. So it is an adjustment. There are higher stakes in college, obviously. Your grades matter more. That helps you get into the job areas, and really the connections you make in college not only can stay with you more likely through your life, but the professional connections can, really affect what kind of job you get. The personal connections, people that you date in college might be somebody that you marry. These friends, your high school friends can be lifelong friends, but college friends definitely can as well. So the relationship stakes are higher, and the grades, can really matter. The classes are more challenging for a lot of people. Some people actually find it easier to not go to class every single day and just be told what to learn and learn it. But a lot of people find it more challenging and difficult to have to manage their own time, not have it explained as well, not have as much time with the professor. It's definitely more that's going to be on you. Social changes, in high school, often you've been with the same group of kids since childhood. In college, you have to forge your own relationships. You have to forge your own place in, your social world. And often that means recreating supportive networks and still keeping up with the relationships at home when you may have a lot less time. There are more opportunities for activities that can contribute to your overall stress level. Often these things are exciting and fun, but if you get into too many activities, that can be experienced as stress. It's a positive type of stress, but too much activity can tend to help you feel overwhelmed, even if it's fun. Activities that may contribute to your overall stress levels. This is not specific, stressors, but things that make everything feel more stressful. Late nights and early mornings that lead to sleep deprivation. A lot of the time, there's more pressure to stay up later, whether to study or to party. There's just more to do, more to get done, and there's a lot of exciting things out there. So that may make it harder for you to get to sleep when you need to, and yet it's still very important to get to class. So if you have early classes, late nights can be especially difficult, obviously. Unhealthy eating is another thing that people don't always think about as a stressor. But if you're not getting proper nutrition, you're less resilient to stress, you're more emotionally reactive. And in college, it can be more difficult to make yourself eat healthy. Healthy food is less convenient to come by a lot of the time if you don't have a kitchen right there in your house anymore, or you're living in the dorms or whatever. There's fast food everywhere and convenience foods, and it can be very tempting to just grab something that's maybe not as good for you as a piece of fruit or fresh vegetable. Too much partying, obviously. Some partying is good, some fun is important. You need to have balance, but the important thing to remember is you need to have balance. So too much stress really can take a toll. The short-term effects of the stress are anxiety, feelings of self-doubt, feeling overwhelmed by what you face. These can be sort of pervasive. Once you feel anxiety and self-doubt in one area, you start to feel it in other areas. This can lead to a whole pessimistic frame of mind where you stop expecting yourself to do well and you start expecting yourself to, do not as well. And this can be sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you walk around feeling anxious and doubting yourself, you may take fewer risks. You may, kind of set yourself up to fail without realizing it. Mild cognitive impairment, this can be a difficult one because obviously you need to have your memory sharp, you need to have your focus there. So if you're feeling stress and that's affecting how you think and how you learn, that's going to create more stress. Because you might not be doing as well in your classes as you could. Racing heart, cold hands, other physical symptoms. We've all felt it, especially if you're speaking in front of the class, that stress response that makes you feel more focused on what's happening in your body than what's happening around you, and less of an ability to handle challenges of college. All these things can sort of add up to that. But if you experience stress in the long term, this is where we were talking about chronic stress, where your stress response is triggered, but you aren't able to untrigger it. So you're just sort of walking around feeling, in the fight or flight space. And you sort of can get used to it to the point where you don't even realize you're experiencing a low-grade level of stress all the time, or perhaps a high level of stress. If you experience this for too long, and this can be they've found some changes in as few as several hours or a few days. So this can be days, weeks, or months of too much stress. You can experience stomach and digestive issues, IBS, upset stomach, eating problems, either eating too much or too little, or, losing weight if you're not trying, or putting on too much weight. Heart problems, that can be an issue, especially for longer-term stress. Depressed immunity. This is something that can be found even after small doses of stress. This means that you're less immune to, to whatever you may face, whatever colds, flus are going around, as well as more serious health issues. But, clearly if you're catching every cold that comes by, that's going to create more stress for you and make it more difficult for you to do well. This can all lead to burnout, anxiety disorders, and depression. Things that can really heavily affect you. So if you manage your stress before it manages you, this is a way to get ahead of all of this. Stressed people tend to indulge in some of these negative habits: eating too much or not enough, drinking too much, sleep deprivation, lashing out at others, or again, experiencing burnout. These are all things that people either experience kind of involuntarily, or they may get into these habits as a way of coping. Um, and, they create more stress and more problems. Poor study habits. This is something that can result from stress or just can be a cause of stress. Pulling all-nighters, where you don't plan your study time ahead and you have to cram. A lot of people think of all-nighters as something that is just something that happens in college or rite of passage, and it can feel very productive. If you find yourself getting distracted by all the fun things that can be done or all the responsibilities that you have in other areas, and then you sit and buckle down and pull an all-nighter, it can feel like you're getting a lot done and, you're at your most productive. And sometimes people can kind of plan for that. They can kind of not plan ahead enough and just figure, okay, well, I can always pull an all-nighter, get it taken care of, and, it's all taken care of in a short amount of time. You may already realize, and studies have shown, that pulling all-nighters actually puts you at a big disadvantage. People do not do as well, partially because you need sleep to kind of cement what you're learning. You can put all the information in your head, and REM sleep and other stages of sleep sort of crystallize that, move it from your short-term memory to your long-term memory, and make it easier to retrieve on tests. It's hard enough to take a test if you're really tired. It's even more challenging if the information that you've spent hours cramming in there isn't really in there permanently and it's not in there securely. People have found themselves going to the test and their minds going completely blank after all-nighters. If you're staying up all night to write a paper, this is a little bit less risky because you can turn it in and go to sleep, but still you may not be thinking as clearly, and having the ability to write something and then go back and proofread it when you have a clearer head. Obviously, these are better choices. So do whatever you can to manage your time so that you can have more time. And one thing that people who are procrastinators or people who really do well if they have pressure on them have done successfully is just set a deadline for yourself that's a day or two before your actual deadline, and do all the crazy, all-nighter pulling or, cramming that you would have done. But then you get a good night's sleep, and then you get another day or two to keep studying, and that can make a big difference. So that's what I have to say right now about pulling all-nighters. Obviously, if you find yourself in a position where you haven't studied at all and you have a test, you might want to miss a few hours of sleep for a few hours of studying. You have to decide what a good trade-off is, but so much better if you can organize yourself so that you're not in that position at all. Drinking too much caffeine. A lot of the time people have found that they drink energy drinks and that gives them a boost. And it's true, studies have shown that you have a little bit of mental sharpness additionally that comes when you drink caffeine. The problem is consuming too much caffeine, because you get a boost, and you can boost your exercise, you can boost your workouts with a little caffeine as well. But you get a little boost, you may take more caffeine to get more of a boost, and then eventually you have to crash. And you can't necessarily time when you're going to crash, but you can get really tired, really lethargic, or even just fall asleep. So it's better to fill yourself with nutritious food, boost your energy through exercise, healthier habits. It can not only set you up for now, but it can set you up for the future if you start developing the habit of boosting yourself through natural ways. Having study parties where there's too much partying. Study groups can be fantastic. If you can find a group of people who are as motivated as you, or maybe even more, and you can kind of help each other be at your best, this can be wonderful. But pay attention. If you're going to study groups where there's not as much getting done, you guys are distracting each other, suddenly studying doesn't seem as attractive, you might want to shy away from those and just go to a party if you want to have fun. If you want to get things done, study. Waiting until the last minute, again, for some people, this can be a big motivator, but what people tend to do is miscalculate how much time they need. So deadlines can be great for motivation, but don't actually save things till the last minute. Give yourself a deadline before your actual deadline, and then you get that motivation, but you also get enough time to get things done and sleep. Being overwhelmed by test anxiety. This is kind of a serious one. A lot of people experience test anxiety, even if they're very intelligent, they're good students. And test anxiety can be managed through preparation and specific stress management techniques. I've given full webinars on test anxiety for College Week Live before and in other areas, but they're basically, and there are articles about test anxiety on my website. But basically, the most important things you can do is accept that you might feel anxious and sort of make friends with that feeling. And when you feel the anxiety, just kind of let it wash over you and let it pass. Have specific techniques to get through a test. You can go through all of them and answer all the easy questions first, and that gets some of the pressure off. And then spend more time on the more difficult questions. Really, preparation, proper nutrition, getting enough sleep, these things can all make a big difference as well. Reminding yourself that one test isn't going to make or break your whole college career. There are specific things that you can, practice doing to reduce your levels of test anxiety. And this is important because if you experience heavy levels of test anxiety, this actually can affect your grades. You may have experienced it already. If this has happened to you before, remember, every new test is a new opportunity, and just because this may have been an issue for you in the past doesn't mean you can't get past it now. With some of the things that we just talked about. Your experience is under your control. Just because some factors are inevitable, you have more control than you think. By doing some of these proactive things that we've been talking about, controlling your diet, controlling your exercise levels, and more things that we're going to talk about in a minute, you can make all of your challenges manageable, and you can make them feel almost kind of fun and exciting to take on rather than overwhelming and scary. There are just different things you can do by shifting your focus, changing the way you think about stress, and really being prepared and knowing when to put limits on what you're doing and how. With the right tools, your college years can be some of the most exciting, rewarding, memorable years of your life. And, they can be a really exciting launch to a wonderful rest of the life that you're going to have. Really learn to manage the stress and enjoy it now, and you'll really be setting yourself up. So now's the time to take charge, because you can create the habits now when you're still learning things and when you're still kind of developing habits. It's so much easier to change a habit when it's only been a habit for a few years than it's been ingrained for decades. So you're more malleable at this point. Take advantage of that. These habits can last throughout your life, and they really can lead to greater happiness, greater health, and more success in life, as well as increased longevity. So this may not seem that important right now, but future you will thank present you if you start working on these things now. And present you will also be happy because you'll be doing better in school and you'll be having a better time. So a really good start is watching this webinar, but there are going to be specific things as we talk about them. I want you to think about actually putting them into practice in your life. And this webinar has a lot of ideas, some that we've presented already and some that are to come. Don't get overwhelmed by all of the ideas. You don't have to do everything at once. Some of them you can do it as you think about it. Like, if you hear about a test coming up, just think, oh, don't wait till the last minute. And, schedule things so that you're not. But other things, they're habits that you may want to take on. You may get 5 different ideas that you want to implement in your life today. You know yourself. You know if it would be possible for you to try 5 new things at once, or if that will make you feel overwhelmed and you might quit all of them. If that's the case, you might want to take on 1 or 2, and as you found it to be easier to keep these things going for a few weeks, then add more. For those of you who Well, everybody's at your computer. You can open up a window and make a list of the things that you might want to implement in your life as we go. And then you can prioritize what you think you might want to do right now, what you think you might want to do in the future, what's more important, what's less important, what's something you don't want to forget. And again, you can ask questions if any come up. So let's get started. But basically, it's important to, or not get started, but let's keep going and talking about more things you can do. I like to recommend having a mix of short-term stress relievers and long-term healthy habits. So the short-term stress relievers are ways to kind of calm your body, reverse your stress response so you're not reacting from a place of panic and reaction, you're being proactive. The long-term healthy habits are things that you do whether or not you feel stressed. You try to incorporate them into your daily or weekly life, and they build resilience. So you're going to be less stressed by the things that come up and more able to handle them. So psychological stress relief, this is one of those things that can be a short-term or a long-term stress reliever. When you're in the moment, when you're in the moment, you can change the way you're thinking about things. But the long-term things that you can do are, hang on, I'm sorry, just a minute. Apologize. So in the moment when something comes and makes you feel stressed, you can change the way you think about it and change the way it's affecting you. But these are also habits that you might want to develop in the long term so that when you face stress, these are just automatic. One of the things that you can do is change your self-talk. So change the way you talk to yourself, change the way you experience things. Self-talk is basically that voice in your head that interprets things that happen. Some people can be really down on themselves and beat themselves up with their self-talk. A good example is my phone just rang. Usually I don't have the phone in the room with me when I'm doing a webinar, and I realized that it was here. Negative self-talk could be, I could beat myself up. Oh, why did you do that? This is such a mess. Positive self-talk would be like, oops, let it go. So self-talk kind of comes in all the time. You have a running commentary that is sort of going on in your head, changing specific things. And I have full articles on this on my website. There are specific ways that you can alter your self-talk, but using less negative language and more positive language can actually alter your experience. Sometimes even they've done a study, if you look at things as a challenge rather than a threat, if you just tell yourself, oh, this is an interesting challenge I'm facing, you actually feel less stressed. Your stress response is less likely to be triggered, and you handle it more proactively, and you're more, you're happier and you're feeling better about yourself as you take on the challenge. If it doesn't feel like a threat, you're basically telling yourself you can handle this, and then your mind says, okay, I can handle this, let's see how. Whereas if you look at it as a threat, it's more of a question of, can I handle this? And then your focus tends to go more toward anxiety, fear, not necessarily knowing that you can handle it. So you're not looking as much at what you can do as, can you do anything? So little things like that, changing the way you think about yourself and the way you talk to yourself about your problems and the way you talk to yourself about others. Interpreting people's motives more negatively than they need to be. Things like that can cause more stress as well. So giving people the benefit of the doubt and giving yourself the benefit of the doubt. Thinking like an optimist. Now this is an interesting one because they've found specific differences between optimists and pessimists. It's not just optimists always think everything's going to work out and pessimists are always looking at the dark side. It's more subtle than that. And this is why I really like that optimist quiz that I have, because often people can be pessimistic and not realize it. What pessimists tend to do is if something good happens, they tend to minimize it in their mind. They don't take credit for it. They think it's due to circumstances. They think it's a fluke, so they limit it in time, they limit it in their ability to control it, and they sort of think, okay, well, this was an isolated incident. They do the opposite with negative events. They think, oh no, this must have been my fault. They think, oh, this is really, really bad, and more bad things like this are going to happen. And they think that it's a sign of their incompetence, and they sort of uh, make it bigger in their head than they need to be, and they make it more permanent. Optimists, on the other hand, do the opposite. When something bad happens, they look at the circumstances rather than looking at it as their fault. They don't see it as a defect in themselves. They see it as, oh, it was a fluke, and, next time it can be different. They also look at it as an isolated incident, not something that's going to be, plaguing them forever. Like, oh, I got a C on this test. What a fluke. I'll do better next time. Whereas a pessimist might say, oh, I got a C on this test. I'm a C student. I guess I'm not going to be able to have that career in astrophysics or, whatever. So optimists tend to really minimize the negative, and they maximize the positive. If something good happens, they see how they can give themselves credit for it. Wow, I got an A on the test. Not, oh, I guess I studied. A pessimist might say, I got an A on the test. I guess I studied enough this time. An optimist would say, I got an A on the test. I guess I'm really good at this. So they make it permanent. They make it because of themselves. And, oh, it looks like I'm an A student. This is great. I'm going to be, set up for life. And, sometimes optimists can overshoot it. You don't want to be so optimistic that you don't study because you think you don't need to. But, healthy optimists tend to be realistic, but look for the positive wherever they can find it and minimize the tendency to expect the worst just because it's possible, which is what, pessimists a lot of the time can do. So if you find yourself thinking like a pessimist instead of a realistic optimist, just, make a few subtle changes. You can consciously direct your focus to the more optimistic and see, what's possible, what did you do right, what can go right, and then you're more likely to do what can, be done to make it a reality. Looking for the gift in a situation, bad things happen, but it's very rare that something happens and it's entirely negative and there's nothing good that can be, gleaned from it. If, for example, if you do really poorly on a test and you do really poorly in a class and you have to retake it, that, is one of the worst case scenarios that people think about. But it can also be a signal. Maybe this isn't an area of study that is the best for you. You might want to re-examine your goals, and that can actually lead to finding something you like even better. Or it could be a signal to, change your study habits, and that's something that once you do it, you have better study habits for, as long as you're in school, and that can be helpful too. There are different ways to find a positive in a negative situation and, really get the most out of it. So, find whatever you can in the difficult things you face and be grateful for that. It doesn't mean that you're glad that everything bad happens, but, don't waste the pain of a negative situation by not finding the positive in it. Banishing perfectionism also. A lot of people look at perfectionism as kind of, they sort of humble brag, like, oh, I'm such a perfectionist. I just have to do great at everything. And they sort of think of it as a strength, and it's actually not. Being a high achiever is a strength. Being a perfectionist is a detriment. And the difference is a high achiever, if they get 98% on a test, they'll go out and celebrate. And, as optimists, they'll look at it as, oh, I'm a good student. I studied well. More good things to come. As a perfectionist, they will focus on that 2% that they missed and react like pessimists. Oh, wow, I couldn't do that. I am not as good as I should have been, and they'll really beat themselves up. And pessimists tend to be stressed a lot more of the time than high achievers, and that stress can actually sabotage them. The stress and the pessimism that comes with a perfectionism is really the problem of perfectionism. Now, the benefit of perfectionism obviously is people are trying really hard to do well. And that part of it can, make you successful. But you can have that part by being a high achiever. You can try really hard and do really well and still pat yourself on the back for a 98% on a test, or, for whatever it is that you did right. You can even pat yourself on the back for a mediocre job, congratulate yourself for the stuff that you did right, and then decide what you're going to do better next time. You don't have to beat yourself up. And if you do find yourself beating yourself up a lot, see what you can do to change that. Change your behavior, but also give yourself a break and realize that you're not helping yourself by doing that. Social stress relief. Social stress relief is a very important aspect of stress management. Social stress tends to hit us harder than other areas of stress. We tend to get more upset by being snubbed by a good friend than by getting a bad grade on a test, for example. And we're sort of wired to be that way. We're social creatures. We need the other people in our lives to kind of help us survive. So it's natural that we feel that way. Don't ignore the people in your life and their importance, and don't take them for granted, obviously. Also, have different types of people help you in different areas of your life. Have a supportive group of friends. They don't all have to be the exact same. They don't have to be all people that you can tell your darkest secrets to, but if you can have at least a couple people that you can share everything with, that can be very affirming, that can really help you relieve stress. But, you may want to have that friend who drags you to Vegas and helps you blow off steam, or takes you, out when you're feeling down. The friend that you can always have fun with. Preferably not a friend who gets you into trouble. The fun but safe friend. Also, it's good to have friends who are further along in their goals than you are in yours, and you can kind of look at what they're doing right, sort of as mentors, or expert friends is what some people call them. They basically can inspire you to be better. Figure out what your needs are and try to invest the time and energy into nurturing relationships so that you can have this. And obviously that means giving back as much as you're getting, and like really nurturing these relationships, not just taking. Having workout buddies, study buddies, people who have the same goals as you in one area or another can be very helpful, because when you have a workout buddy, that can get you to the gym more easily than if you just tell yourself, I'm going to go every Monday at this time and every Wednesday at that time. Because if you know that there's somebody who's waiting for you, or somebody who you're going to have to call and give your lame excuse to, it often sounds differently when you have to say it out loud to somebody who is counting on you to keep them motivated than if you just say it to yourself in your head when you'd rather be watching Game of Thrones. So having people who are counting on you to keep them motivated, and you're counting on them to keep you motivated, that can be really helpful in staying on track. Seeking out positive influences, the people who are going to bring out your best rather than your worst. Staying in contact with people from home, the people you've grown up with, the people who know you well. These are all things that are really important to focus on. So even though you're going to have homework, you're going to have classes, you may be studying for tests that are coming up right now, do not forget to carve out time for people, because in positive psychology, that field that I told you about, they're finding that our relationships are really what make our lives the most meaningful. And you're going to need to invest in them now and, at various times throughout your life. So, and also know where to go if you need help. Student health services are on just about every college campus. If you feel overwhelmed, you can get counseling. They have workshops, usually, that can help you manage stress, study better. There are resources available to you. So, if you're still in high school, there's a counseling office there. You can talk to parents, teachers, friends. But if you feel overwhelmed and you feel that what you're doing to cope with stress isn't enough, don't be afraid to reach out. So developing effective study habits is a very important stress reliever, because that can help you minimize the stress that you're feeling from all the work you have to do. Maintaining an organized schedule is really important because that can help you stay away from the all-nighters. Sometimes it will feel like you don't have enough time to get everything done. Occasionally this is true, and that might mean that you need to take on fewer classes or fewer obligations next semester. One of the great things about college is every semester can be a new start. So you're not going to be experiencing, things that you can't get out of for too long. You may have to work to put yourself through college, and that's something that might be constant, but there's enough change and variability in a college schedule that you really can, not be more than a few months away from changing things, if that. Often you can make changes in your life now, and one of the best changes you can make is looking at your schedule and figuring out where everything fits, scheduling in breaks, making sure you maintain balance, and looking at it on paper or on your computer screen and seeing where everything can fit, where everything fits the most easily. And if you can't physically fit everything onto that schedule, that's when you look at where to cut and how to cut things out. But if you can write everything down and sort of assign a time for everything, including your leisure time, that ensures that you're not going to let your leisure time take over your studying time to the point that you have to cram, or let your studying time take over your leisure time to the point that you feel burned out. Creating a study area and using it, this is really important. Part of what's important about this is just practicality. You want to be able to focus and not be distracted. You want to be able to get into the zone and, stay in the zone until you have done what you needed to do. Break your study sessions into, I've heard that an hour and a half is the ideal amount of time to go and then take a break. Breaking your time into chunks of an hour and a half, if you're studying, can be a good way to get a lot done without getting to the point where you're not absorbing it as well or your output isn't as good. But another reason it's good to have a study area that works for you is if you have the same surroundings around you. I learned this in Psych 101 a long time ago. If you have the same surroundings around you, your memory works better. You have visual cues that can help you again and again remember what you learned the last time, and it can help cement it. The same goes for taking tests. If you sit in the same seat every time, you have visual cues around the room that can help jog your memory when, if you learn certain things in the class, you'll remember where you were sitting when you learned it by looking around, and that can help jog your memory. It's probably not going to make the difference between an A and a C, but I've personally found that this works, so I'm passing it on to you. See how it works for you. Using your calendar is important. When you're organizing things, try to work first and then play. I know I sound like a total mom saying that, and yes, I am. But the reason why this works so well is if you have something fun waiting for you after your session, you might work harder, you might have more stamina for it. And when you get to play and you have your reward, you'll feel pretty good about yourself and you'll enjoy it more. If you're playing first and then working, you're using up some of your energy that you really need for work on play, and so you're more fatigued when you're actually studying. Plus, it's very hard to drag yourself away from something fun to do something that you hate. So while you're doing the fun stuff, you're probably going to feel guilt that you're not actually working like you should be. And then when you're doing the work, you're going to feel more disappointed that you couldn't still be having fun. It's better to just set yourself up to succeed, work, and then reward yourself for the work with the fun. And you reward yourself for hard work in other areas too. If you meet an important goal, take yourself out to dinner, or, have friends go with you. Let yourself do whatever it is that you really enjoy. Additional test taking tips. The sitting in the same seat every day, it's a good one. Know your learning style and work with it. If you're more of a visual learner, a lot more time to do the reading. And if you have to miss a class or two, if you have to choose between missing a class or two or missing reading time, if you're a visual learner, you might want to just opt with the reading. If you're an auditory learner, if you learn better by listening, don't miss class. And, the experiential learners, being in the class environment and being in a study group where you can talk to people about it and sort of like work it out experientially, that could be one of the best techniques for you. And you can research more of this. There are several different learning style types, and figure out what works best for you and work with that. Use the same relaxation techniques before you study and before you take a test. This is important. If you do breathing exercises really well, do them before you study and then do them before your test. And again, this goes to the jogging your memory thing. If you can get yourself in the same frame of mind when you're testing that you were in when you were studying, this can help you. It can jog your memory and it can help you feel more relaxed at the same time. So if your memory cue can be a stress management technique, that's all the better. Wake yourself up with peppermint aromatherapy. This is something that I love doing because research has shown that it works. Peppermint, the scent of peppermint can actually help you learn more. It can help you memorize things better, and it can wake you up. And, it takes like no effort. So what I used to like to do, you can suck on peppermints and, you're going to be smelling it. I used to also have some essential oils, some peppermint essential oils that I'd put right under my nose and have it in the test with me. So I'd use them when I had study sessions, and I'd use them when I was taking tests. And one of the things that is fun, easy, and works, visualizing your success. So imagining yourself doing well, see it happening, and it's more likely to occur. Athletes do this with their practice, and it actually has been, research shows it improves your game. You can do this with your tests, and it will lower your stress levels and help you succeed. So, it takes 5 minutes or even a few more, like, 2 or 3 minutes. You can even take 10 seconds and imagine yourself walking in there, being confident and acing it. But the more detailed you can imagine this happening, and the more positive, the better. One thing that they found with positive affirmations that's also true with visualizations is imagine something that you think is realistic. So sort of the most positive end of realistic. If you imagine yourself walking in there and, everybody high-fiving you and acing every problem without studying, your subconscious mind might know that that's not necessarily realistic. But if you imagine something that realistically could happen, walking in there, feeling very confident, acing it because you've studied, remembering everything that you studied because it's already in there, and feeling relaxed, that's something that your body will, agree with, your mind will agree with, and it's more likely to happen. They found that your subconscious mind can't always tell the difference between a thought and an experience. So if you visualize success, it's sort of like creating more success, and that makes your mind expect more success. So that's how that works. That can calm you down in the moment, and that can also be a good way to prepare. Obviously, don't do this instead of studying, but in conjunction, it can really help. Creating structures in your life. This is something especially for first-year students, second year, or people who haven't mastered it yet. You may have had a more structured home environment before college where you have people telling you when to wake up, when to go to sleep, making you breakfast, making you exercise. But once you get to college, you may have to do a lot of this yourself. So setting bedtimes and if you're still in high school, this can still be a very good thing to do. Instead of waiting for somebody to come along and make you go to bed, set an alarm on your clock for when you think you need to go to bed to get enough sleep to, feel good. And, 8 hours, if you're a teenager, you might need more than that because you're still growing. It's important to get enough sleep so that you can function well. Creating rituals for exercise, not just telling yourself you need to, but joining a class, something that's going to make you exercise on a regular basis. That's a structure. Like telling yourself you need to exercise is an idea. Joining a class is a structure, or putting it on your schedule that every day at 3:30 you go to the gym. That's a good idea. An even better idea is deciding after this class I'm going to go to the gym. After, before dinner I'm going to go to the gym. Something where you link it to something that you're already doing is even better, because that helps you, it helps jog your memory. You may not remember, oh, 3:30, time to go, and you may not even feel like going, but if you're passing the gym on your way home from somewhere and you just tell yourself you are going to stop every time you drive home from that class, it's easier to keep it going. Creating healthy diet habits, scheduling your time, maintaining socially supportive habits, like making yourself call specific friends once a week, or making a time to see certain friends at certain times of the week, things like that. Scheduling regular downtime. This is something that people often do too little or not enough. So make sure you have good balance with your downtime so that you don't feel burned out, but you are getting enough done. Quick stress relievers, how we talked about how it's nice to be able to reverse your stress response. We're going to go through pretty quickly because it is getting, later in the hour. But these are all addressed on my website, stress.about.com. I cover them in detail, and there are specific better and worse ways to do these. So breathing exercises, there are many different types of these, and I love them because you can do them anytime. People don't even have to know you're doing them half the time. Quick meditations, you can take a 30-second meditation break or a 3-minute meditation. And studies have shown 3 minutes of meditation actually can reduce the levels of cortisol in your blood. So it's better if you can regularly meditate for 20 minutes a time, but 3 minutes a day is better than 30 minutes a week, or an equivalent amount of time. So, or 30 minutes every 10 days. So this is a really good one to try. Meditation also builds resilience towards stress. Any physical exercise, again, 3 minutes has been shown to be an adequate stress reliever. Not optimum, but enough to make a difference. And if you keep going after that, you can build resilience. Visualizations, getting a pep talk from a friend or giving yourself one, and sort of making yourself regain perspective with some of the self-talk techniques that we talked about. These are all ways to calm yourself down in the moment and reverse your stress response. Cutting out stressors wherever possible, eliminating people who drain you, obligations that aren't worth the effort, tolerations, which are things in your life that you're used to tolerating, but they take a toll. A disorganized workspace, unsatisfying job, uncomfortable clothes. These are all things that life coaches call tolerations, and it's good to cut them out of your life because they create low-grade stress. Maintaining stress relief habits. These are things that are going to build resilience for you. Exercising, maintaining friendships, meditation, sessions of 15 minutes a day or longer. Don't go for too long, but because you don't want to create a stressful situation. And they're actually diminishing returns. 2 hours of meditation isn't that much more effective. It isn't 4 times more effective as 30 minutes. Maintaining optimism and a sense of humor, journaling, gratitude journals, or, emotional processing journals. These things all build resilience towards stress. So, they're things to really think about and prioritize. Next steps. Decide what you need. Like if you procrastinate, set up organization and structures in your life. If you feel frequently overwhelmed, cut out some stressors and incorporate resilience building habits into your life. If you need more support, get connected. If you need more balance, re-examine where you spend your time and try to get more leisure time, or, help yourself work a little harder. If you suffer from, I put text anxiety, because that can be anxiety from studying, having too much to study, or from taking tests, or any of this that you experience in college. Prepare yourself, find fast-acting stress relievers, and use the psychological techniques we've talked about. So after this webinar, it would be a really good idea to kind of think about what it is you need the most and decide, how to get that. So you can also go to my website, stress.about.com, and it has all those things that we talked about. Free weekly newsletter is a really good thing to get connected to, because if you forget about stress management for a little while, this can kind of bring you back there. I have social media resources that you can find from my about.com page. Again, I'm going to do the book giveaway through Goodreads, or you can pick it up online at any time. There's a Kindle book, and that's it. Thank you so much for coming. I wasn't able to get to questions, so I'm going to be answering them on my website, stress.about.com. And thank you for attending, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your College Week Life experience, and hope to see you again. Thanks.